Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Damron Show. Today I want to talk about something that is just oh so prevalent in my practice. I've struggled with it as well. And I think that if you are a woman getting a menstrual cycle and likely in kind of your 30s, 40s era, and even you will probably relate to this. So today we're going to talk about how stress in the nervous system actually amplify the emotional symptoms in your cycle, and to that extent, the physical ones as well. And I want to talk about this because, like I said, so many of my patients, when I ask them in my consults, how's your period, PMS symptoms, oh my gosh, I'm so ragey, irritable, I have a lot more like emotional volatility or sensitivity, I'm really anxious, I even get panic attacks, I can't sleep, or I'm weeping and crying before my period. And I've actually been diagnosed with PMDD before, and so I get it. It's a really kind of miserable way to live for you, but also those around you as well. And I know that the interesting things is like when you're in this state, and like I said, have had this too. I had like postpartum rage with my second, and it was like I know this is irrational, but I just can't help it. Like I can't calm myself down. And so, my youngest son, who I had that with hormonally after or postpartum, is going to be 10 here in about 3 months. And so, I've gotten through that and found some things that have been really helpful. And obviously throughout the last 10 years, continued to work on my nervous system and stress response and all of that stuff too. And so all of it's helped. But for years, I actually begged the question of, we talk a lot about anxiety and the nervous system regulation and neuroplastic symptoms and all of that stuff, of which anxiety, irritability, rage, OCD, depression, those can be a big part of that in itself. And so I've begged the question to myself, with myself and patients, of, is this actually a hormonal thing because we're noticing it only at a certain point in our cycle where things get really bad? Or is it actually like a neuroplastic thing where we need to treat this sort of like luteal phase or ovulatory phase anxiety as neuroplastic? And the answer that I have come up with through my own experience, clinical experience, how I've treated it, consulting with numerous colleagues in the space of both hormones and the mind-body space, the answer that I've come up with is that it's neither one nor the other, it's both. And so I know that can feel like, oh my gosh, I just wanted one answer, but it really is both. So like I said, I have struggled with this in my own life at various times where, like I said, postpartum, I really, that was the first time that I had really noticed a lot of mood symptoms hormonally, and it lasted a couple months and then it got better. And then since then, certain cycles obviously are better than others in terms of the anxiety and the mood and things like that. There have been a couple cycles, years ago that I would have panic attacks before them, nocturnal panic attacks. So I have lived this life too. I get it. And sometimes, it's not just during the premenstrual period or right before your period, but also some of these things can happen around ovulation too. So some of my patients will describe their ovulation time, symptomatically as a whole: bloating, breast tenderness, irritability, water retention, feeling tired, all of those things just as bad around ovulation as they do actually their period. And so here's the thing that I want you to know first off, and I say this a lot: you are not broken. There's nothing about you that's wrong or broken, and you're also not alone. This is really common. In fact, I have a front row seat in this, and I feel incredibly grateful and blessed to have that, with talking to women of all ages every single day. And this is so common. So many of us struggle with these mood symptoms. And I'm going to go through kind of why this is, why it maybe feels like it's even getting worse in today's culture. And I'm sure you can sort of gather why. We are going to talk about the hormones that cause these shifts, because like I said, it is a hormonal fluctuation for sure that causes it, but the stress and nervous system stuff amplifies it for sure. And so then we're going to talk about what to do to feel a bit more regulated and help this. The reason that it's not just your hormones shifting is because all of us that have a menstrual cycle have these fluctuations of hormones, right? And we're going to talk about, exactly what happens. But if, all of us have these sort of like chemical structural things happening in our body, and not all of us experience these same symptoms. Now, yes, some of us have lower progesterone than others and higher estrogen, and different levels of this for sure. But we all experience this like fluctuation and this drop, and in perimenopause, the roller coaster, and not all of us have such amplified mood symptoms. And so that begs the question of, okay, well, what else can it be? And the answer to that is your stress hormones also create that. And so why are your stress hormones there? Like we've talked about on so many previous episodes, because your brain is perceiving danger in your world. And we're going to talk about what that exactly looks like. So real quick, I just want to run through sort of hormonally what's happening. So at ovulation, your body has tons and tons of estrogen. It's really high. It's the most dominant time of estrogen of the month. And for the most part, most of us feel the best kind of like after our period ends into ovulation. We feel more energy, extroverted, more creativity. We feel leaner. We feel like our appetite is more regulated. We feel like our sleep is the best. This is generally the time that we feel the best. But right before ovulation, there is a quick dip in estrogen. And so that dip or that drop is what can cause symptoms. So it can cause anxiety, irritability, mood sensitivity. It can cause migraines and headaches. That high estrogen level can lead us to feel a little bit more like water retention and bloating and breast tenderness and things like that. So this can happen at this point in time, even though it really should probably be the time that we feel the best. If you don't, that's okay. We can certainly treat that as well. In the luteal phase, after we ovulate, that is called the luteal phase. So from ovulation to the start of your period is when progesterone starts to take over. Your body's like, okay, we've ovulated, that corpus luteum has ruptured. Now let's produce this progesterone, which can be thought of as progestation for conception. Let's produce a bunch of that in case we get pregnant. And so about 5 to 7 days post ovulation, that is when your body's progesterone is the highest and you have a second little surge of estrogen. So in essence, what we want is we want this ratio of these two hormones, this estrogen and progesterone, to be in a good ratio. So what happens commonly in perimenopause and puberty, we can think about perimenopause as like our second puberty. This ratio can get a little off. So progesterone can be a little bit lower. Stress exacerbates that or amplifies this lowering of progesterone because cortisol steals it. And also estrogen is just kind of on this big roller coaster. And so especially in that first phase or two of perimenopause, in your maybe like late 30s to mid 40s or even late 40s, estrogen's actually higher than it was previously, like when things felt better. And so that's why this ratio of these two hormones, estrogen, progesterone, gets off and can create all of this PMS, irregularity, mood symptoms that we see. So the other thing is prostaglandins increase, which are little inflammatory molecules that are produced toward the end of our menstrual cycle to help thin out that lining that we're going to shed. And that can create as well bloating, irritability, anxiety, low mood. Now, simultaneously, cortisol and adrenaline can increase. And when your brain is on high alert, this can make these small shifts in hormones, these little fluctuations, feel like big storms. So the hormone part of things, these are normal and will always happen as long as you're having a menstrual cycle. And sure, we can absolutely support progesterone. Progesterone is like our calming, soothing, sleep well. It works on the GABA and serotonin neurotransmitters. It makes us feel great. And so if that hormone is low, you're certainly going to notice some mood symptoms. And so supporting that can be of utmost help to women who are struggling with really perimenopausal symptoms across the board, truly, because generally that hormone is low. And like I said, stress, perception of danger, nervous system amplification, and hypervigilance, that all increases the progesterone deficiency in our body. So I absolutely do think that that can be really, really helpful, but I don't think it's the only thing that needs to be done. I also think that looking at your estrogen and making sure that you're detoxing it right, it's basically being metabolized appropriately, because remember I said in perimenopause, it's your estrogen's all over the place. It's high, it's low, it's fluctuating, it's higher and lower cycle to cycle. And so maybe some of your cycles feel pretty substantially different than the previous one. It's all due to these fluctuations in the level of estrogen throughout. So like I said, these are normal. There are things we can do to support this. In terms of progesterone support, you can do things like vitamin B6. You can do things like Vitex or chaste berry is helpful. You can do something like a progesterone HRT, whether you choose to do it as an oil, a cream, topical, or you want to do something like oral micronized. There's different considerations there. Oral micronized definitely absorbs the best, better than through the skin, because progesterone is a fairly big molecule, and so some of it gets lost through the skin. However, I have a lot of my patients do lower doses of progesterone to start, especially in those earlier stages of perimenopause, where we need something like under 100 milligrams to kind of support that. Once you get about 100 milligrams or above, the most common kind of dosage of that would be something like 100 to 200 milligrams of oral micronized progesterone. And you can take that a few different ways. You can, generally speaking, if you're having luteal phase symptoms, mood symptoms particularly, you would take it from about ovulation to the start of your period, so maybe like 14 days or so, and then take a break and then start it again in 14 days. So that is how we can support progesterone. I actually got this question on Instagram yesterday of somebody who said that they have estrogen dominant symptoms, which is all the things that we've talked about here so far, and wondering if they should take DIM versus calcium D-glucarate. And the answer is, we don't know until we really kind of get in and ask some more subjective and objective questions. So DIM, you might have heard of that, is really helpful at lowering your estrogen level. So I put a lot of my patients on DIM, but we have to make sure that we actually want to lower estrogen. So some people have actually normal or lower even levels of estrogen and still display estrogen dominant symptoms. And it's because their body's not detoxing it quite as well as it used to. Now, why is that? Generally speaking, it's because of stress. It's because your body is stressed out, and so it's depleting certain nutrients like B vitamins, magnesium, choline, a lot of good liver supportive cofactors to the detoxification process. So the other part is gut health. We want to make sure that your gut health is nice and healthy to get your estrogen through there. You're having regular bowel movements. All of that has to be done to have a good estrogen level. So if your estrogen is actually elevated or there's room to lower it, DIM works well. If it's not, then calcium D-glucarate works well because it helps to metabolize that without actually lowering your estrogen level. So, you likely want to work with somebody who's pretty educated in this to be able to interpret labs, interpret your symptoms and things like that to give you the right answer, because it can make things worse if you get on some of these supplements or vitamins and you don't need to be. I've seen it numerous times where it can throw off ovulation, it can make your estrogen level low, it can make you skip cycles. You don't want to just enter into these things willy-nilly like, oh, I heard DIM helps, and find yourself getting hot flashes, night sweats without a cycle, those types of things. So make sure that you're working with somebody who can sort of at least put that together. Now, again, one of the things, and I talk about this all the time in terms of other practitioners, functional medicine, is that a lot of practitioners are solely looking at this objective data and saying, okay, progesterone's low, estrogen needs supported, maybe gut health or whatever, but they're not swimming far enough upstream to determine why. Why is this happening? It's not always just perimenopause. There's actually, like I said, this nervous system component, because even your nervous system, if it's sort of like stuck in this high alert and your brain's always in fight or flight, it's depleting certain nutrients. It's causing your gut health to be off, your motility, your gut microbiome, your inflammation, your immune system changes. Progesterone lowers, testosterone, DHEA lowers. Estrogen to some extent can too. And it causes, neurotransmitters change. So it causes these physical things that we see and we're like, oh, okay, here's another supplement. Here's a supplement for this. And pretty soon you're stuck with this laundry list of supplements for each and every marker that's wrong on your labs. And what's the end result? Are you going to just continue to take these forever? And like I said, we're not still really getting to the root. Our bodies want to be in balance. And there's a lot of evidence in the hormone world that shows that perimenopause is getting worse symptomatically for women than maybe generations previous. And it's for a lot of reasons. A lot of it is due to high stress, overcommitment, overstimulation, a lot of pressure for women to be all things to all people. The toxin load is higher, of course, like there's environmental things that are happening as well. But this is not just a hormonal thing that's happening. There's other factors that are playing into how a woman's body reacts to her environment. And that, in my opinion, is what's making perimenopausal symptoms for women worse than maybe like previous generations. So let's talk about next, like the amplifier effect of stress and anxiety, OCD, depression, rage, irritability, all of that stuff. When your nervous system is stuck in high alert, meaning that your body has been in fight or flight and your brain thinks that it needs to be stuck in this hypervigilant high alert to make sure that you're safe. And this can be in any regard. It can be in health. So you're noticing all the physical sensations of your body, any sort of like weird sensation. It kind of like, oh, is that dangerous? Is this okay? It might be with parenting. It might be with your work. It might be with your marriage. It might be with the world in general. It might be with news and politics. It might be in all of those areas. Our brain, whatever we have determined or sort of perceive as stressful, dangerous, scary, etc., anything that relates to that, your brain is going to stay in this hypervigilant state. So for example, obviously I do health for a living and I'm always all about, health news articles and things like that. And so when I look at the news, my brain like kind of will scan through, but like the health stuff comes at me. And, I've told you guys this before, I have a previous history of some health anxiety. And so that also was amplified. So that's stuff that I've had to work through in my own life. But when your nervous system is stuck on high alert, your body means that these small shifts are going to feel like big mountains or big storms. And it's going to say, okay, is this okay? These hormonal fluctuations, and then it produces a bunch of cortisol and adrenaline due to those hormonal fluctuations. That intensifies this emotional reactivity. So irritability, feeling frustrated, rage, anxiety, feeling snappy, just feeling on edge all the time, exhaustion and fatigue, lack of sleep and insomnia. Insomnia or sleep, remember, is a really highly psychological process where your brain needs to feel really safe to get into this deep sleep. And if it doesn't, it feels like, we don't know what's going on. We don't know if we should go to sleep. It's not going to let you get into this deep sleep. And so a lot of my patients, regardless of hormones or not, and they're having this trouble with sleep, whether falling asleep, staying asleep, this is a big part of what we do, is teach their brain that you're safe enough to go to sleep. It's okay for you to go to that secondary state of life where you're resting, repairing, restoring, all of that. You don't need to be consciously alert all the time. And so remember that anxiety patterns, keep the brain scanning for danger. And so hormonal dips are going to trigger these strong emotional responses. Irritability, you can think about it as if you were in a burning building. I give this example a lot to my patients. You're not going to feel real patient and calm, right? You're going to feel really snappy, really like the task at hand is to get out of this danger, and anything around you is going to create that like reactivity. So that's what irritability is. It means that your nervous system is stuck in high alert and you need to teach it that it's safe so the emotional reactivity comes down. So it's basically kind of like an analogy here would be that hormones are going to kind of set the weather, but your nervous system is going to determine whether you experience it as a gentle rain or a hurricane. So that is why I talk so much about the nervous system because it's not just fixing your hormones and taking HRT or taking supplements, vitamins, herbs, things like that, and helping your hormones get better. It is a full picture of everything that's interacting. Nothing works in isolation. And like I said, I struggled with this question in my own life for a while of like, what's physical, what's hormonal, what's chemical, and what's like just neuroplastic, stress, OCD, anxiety, nervous system, like, because we treat that, you know, in my mind, I was like, well, we treat them separately. But the truth is we don't actually treat them separately. I think all of it can coexist, and that's what I've sort of settled on in helping with my patients. So, you know, the treatment for this is going to be different depending on what's going on. So like I said, supporting progesterone, I gave you some ideas earlier with B6, progesterone, Vitex. I also think that adrenal herbs like ashwagandha, rhodiola, licorice, schisandra, there's a whole bunch of them, can be helpful at increasing your body's resilience to stress and cortisol. I take adaptogens every day. I really enjoy them. I just feel like they give me a little bit more of an edge to stress. Supporting estrogen metabolism, also incredibly helpful in a lot of regards. So, you know, DIM, calcium D-glucarate, NAC, B vitamins, magnesium, there's all kinds of different things depending on what you need. Don't just go out and get the laundry list that I gave you. That's going to way overdo it. You likely do not need all of those things. In fact, taking them all will probably be very detrimental to you. And so you want to work with somebody who knows, again, how to interpret subjective and objective data to be able to give you the right supplements for this. And quick tip, do not go out and just buy the hormone balancing supplement that is being marketed to you on Facebook or Instagram, because likely those things, what I've noticed, they have proprietary blends in them. We don't know how much of each thing is being given to you. And with that, the doses are generally pretty low. So maybe you've had some success with them, but in general, I usually get my patients off of those because we usually just need a few targeted things in there. And usually the therapeutic dose is a little bit higher than what's in those products. And then the nervous system, you guys, we talk about this all the time. The basis of nervous system regulation is accepting what is. If you find yourself every single menstrual cycle, I need to fix this. What's wrong with me? How do I balance my hormones? What's the symptom going to be like? Scanning for every single day. Okay, on day 21, I experienced this. On day 14, I experienced this. Okay, 3 days before my period, I always experience this. That's a lot of monitoring your symptoms, a lot of predictive coding of like, okay, oh, I think I felt anxiety. It must be due to my hormones. And I have patients that do that from a really benign place, but it's really, you know, you have to be careful with how much you're monitoring things because that will increase the hypervigilance in your nervous system. So, like I said, I work with my patients on what data to get, what data to just kind of ignore or let go, because again, sometimes too much data, we talked about this with the technology stuff, is actually a detriment to our nervous system. It makes it be very, very high alert, hypervigilant to all of these things, which is not helpful. And so, you know, part of this is not anticipating the anxiety, not anticipating the symptoms, getting out of kind of the frustration, despair, anxiety cycle, which I talk about a lot in my course, Calm the Chaos. Practical tips and tools to help stop anxiety in its tracks. If you're struggling specifically with anxiety, I highly recommend getting that course. You can get it at allydamron.com/anxiety because it will teach you the tips and tools to directly deal with anxiety. Anxiety might also be irritability. It might be insomnia. These are all sort of like interwoven pieces of anxiety or your nervous system basically on high alert. So this is what I work on all of my patients with, figuring out exactly what you need to be doing for yourself. But I just wanted to kind of bring this up because, again, I think so many, in our society, we like the black and white. We like, okay, this is due to hormones. Okay, this is stress. Okay, this is due to this is inflammation. And the truth of the matter is we rarely can separate things that our body's doing. It really all is working in all working in interconnected way. Nothing really works in isolation. So that's why I've kind of come up with my 5 pillars to hormone health, because it's all important. It's, you know, nervous system regulation and mindset, nutrition, sleep, exercise and movement, and then lastly, vitamins, supplements, and herbs to help support all of those things. And if we can get all of those things together, your hormones, your digestion, your thyroid, your brain, your inflammation, your immune system, like we can all work on all of those branches, but those are the 5 pillars that have to be in a good place to get all of this together. So anyways, I just wanted to talk about that because there's just, like I said, there's the hormone balancing supplements that are just rampant on Instagram and social media that's like, yeah, this is going to take away your anxiety and improve your mood. And the thing is, it's not just one thing. When you have a lot of stress and anxiety, we generally can handle it and be more resilient to it in that first phase of the menstrual cycle. And then it's like those hormonal fluctuations in the second half really exacerbate and amplify that. Cortisol increases due to the way that our body's network of hormones work, and it really kind of comes out, I call it like full frontal. And so it's not that it didn't exist in the first half, we just were more resilient to it due to the hormones that we had working for us. So I work with this on my patients. This is something that I treat all the time. Like I said, I have a personal experience with it. And I know that there's so many things that we can do to help you heal from this and feel good in your menstrual cycle, not be struggling with your mood, not feel like you hate your husband or your children for a few days to a week out of the month every week. And I know that feels really hard to admit, but that is a reality for not just you if you're thinking that, but truly, it is so common, but it doesn't need to be. So if you need help with this, just go to alliedamron.com/consult to get all the information on how to schedule that discovery call. We'll talk about if we need labs, what labs you currently have. If you have other data on yourself, great. We can talk about best next steps moving forward to get you a real comprehensive plan that fits into your life. I'm not a big fan of, healing protocols and all the things because I think that no one has time for it. It makes your nervous system dysregulation actually worse a lot of the time, and I don't want to do it either. So I think, doing it in a way that fits into your life is 100% possible and plausible, and that's how I work. So if you're interested in scheduling that, go to alliedamron.com/consults, and let's get you feeling better. I'll be back next week.